Okay, guys, so lesson 91, the answers, hopefully I'll have these answers to the practice set and written practice on the blog tonight so you can view it if you need to. Is anybody using the blog for checking their answers? A couple of you? Sometimes? You have the book, okay. Okay. All right, so lesson 91 is about evaluation with positive and negative numbers. And we see if we jump right to our first example, because there really isn't a concept per se to try to a new concept to learn. We have this problem that we see where it says x minus xy minus y if x is equal to a negative 2 and y is equal to a negative 3. So what they want us to do to set these problems up, because now again, here we are again faced with these negatives and positive numbers, multiplying, maybe adding and subtracting. It's all confusing because we have all these, mathematical things going on, and how do we do all that? The best way to start this is actually to replace um, anytime we see a variable, put a parentheses in its place. Okay, so we have parentheses minus, parentheses, parentheses minus, parentheses. Okay, then we can go back and we can fill in what the values of the variable is. It tells us that x has a value of negative 2. So we can put inside here minus 2. X is still minus 2 again. Y is minus 3. And then we have y, which should go here, is minus 3. So this is our problem that we have set up once we do it this way. Okay? And then from the next step, now we simply work our way. We want to work parentheses first, multiplication and division, left to right. And here we can see we have our first multiplication deal to work with. So we want to handle that. So we're going to copy everything else as we have it. We have the minus 2 minus, and then we're going to have a parentheses here because we're going to have minus 2 times minus 3, which is what? Okay, so I put that in there, and then minus, and then my parentheses minus 3. So that's what I'm left with again. Now, I could go ahead and join this 2. I have the opposite of 2. Or you can say negative 2 minus a positive 6. What's negative 2 minus... Now see, what I like to do, what I think you should do here, you should say the opposite of 2 plus the opposite of 6. I think that's... Listen, guys, I'm telling you, I've looked at this 2 or 3 different times, many different ways. For me, it's less confusing. I think if you grasp this concept, it's less confusing for you. If you look at this and you say to yourself, the opposite of 2, remember, we're doing algebraic addition, so the opposite of 2 plus, right, plus the opposite of 6, or the opposite of positive 6. Okay? So the opposite of 2 plus the opposite of 6. It's algebraic addition. Okay. You can do however you want. I just think I just think this way I just think this way is easier to explain, and I think it's easier to understand. So much so that I actually did a little bit of this for my son, who's not extremely good in math, and he thought that this way here of explaining it to you made more sense to him. So if we do that, if we say the opposite of 2, which is what? Negative 2, plus the opposite of 6. So what's the opposite of 6? So we're saying that, let me write it down. We're saying negative 2 plus negative 6 is what? What's negative 2 plus negative 6? It's got to be negative 8, right? Yes, we have negative 8 minus a negative 3. Watch, guys. Watch, guys. Watch. The question I'm asking myself, look at this, please. Negative 8 plus the opposite for this one here of the opposite, right, for this one here, 3. First of all, what is the opposite of the opposite of 3? No. No, no, what is the opposite of 3? What is the opposite of that? That's it. So the opposite of the opposite is going to be a positive. And guys, listen, so we have an opposite and an opposite equals a positive. But remember, what do we know when we have two like signs? What's it going to be if we have two like signs? It's positive. So this is going to read negative 8 plus a positive 3, or negative 8 plus 3. Okay? And what's a negative 8 plus 3? It's a negative 5. And that's the answer. But you've got to commit one of these things to your memory bank. You have to know that whenever you have, and please look at the screen, you have to know that when you have these two signs together with no constants or no numbers in between them, then you can multiply that and say a negative times a negative is going to make this a positive. And it simply does, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And we have this negative sign outside of this parenthesis, so you can kind of pretend like there's a 1 there and say a negative 1 times the negative 3 is going to be a positive 3. The negative 1 times a negative 3 is a positive 3, because a negative times a negative is a positive. And then so all this here becomes basically a positive 3. And we have a negative 8 plus 3. It gives us the negative 5. If we're at negative 8 on the number line and we add 3 to that, we're going to the positive. It takes us closer to 0, which is going to be a negative 5. Negative 5 is closer to 0 than negative 8 is. Catherine? Mm-hmm. No, they'll be on there tonight. Okay, does everybody kind of get this? Are we okay with this? Yeah, it's just algebraic addition. See, this is why when we had algebraic addition a couple weeks ago, guys, I said you have to get it, because it doesn't go away. Now we're doing it again, and if you didn't understand it before and you don't understand it now, it's just more potential for failure for you, which you don't want to do, obviously. But this is where it can get very stressful, and believe me, I understand. If you feel stressed out. So you have to get this. You really have to get this. Let's look at another one. And we say that, or we see rather, that Nikki says the solution of the equation, and I'm going to write it down here, 3x plus 5 equals negative 1 is negative 2. She's saying that the answer for x is negative 2. So this is a little bit easier than what we just did. They want us to check the answer to see if she's right. Well, how do we do this? She's saying the answer is negative 2. How do we check to see if she's right? Does everybody see that we take this 2 here, because she's saying that x is equal to 2, so we come over here and we put negative 2 here and we see what we get. Does that make sense? Okay, so we take 3 and the value of x is negative 2 plus 5 equals negative 1. Is that a true statement? What's 3 times negative 2? Negative 6 plus 5 equals negative 1. Is that true? That is a true statement. So that's how we prove that what she's saying is true. That was a bit easier, wasn't it? Yeah. Catherine? Yeah. All right. Let's go. They're the only 2 examples we have today, so we're going to go into our practice set. If you want to get your homework notebooks out so you can start doing your homework. Your homework tonight is practice set A through G and written practice 1 through 30, like we always do. Okay. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine. Well, there's no more to do. I can do a practice set problem for you. There's no more examples to do, but we'll do one right here. Okay, guys. Our first one for tonight's homework is x. Let me do it in black. Is black easier to see? Oh, that's horrible. Huh? Do white? Yeah. Okay. Um, x plus xy minus y. And they're saying that x is equal to 3 and y is equal to negative 2. Okay, so what's the first thing we do with this problem? Thank you. Parentheses. We change the x with parentheses. X plus parentheses, parentheses minus parentheses, right? And then I take my variables, these x's and y's, and I put the number in. X is supposed to be a 3, so that goes there. This one goes here, that's a 3. Y is negative 2, so it goes here, negative 2. And then y is negative 2, it goes right here, negative 2. Okay? Now, so now we, left to right, we look for parentheses, we look for multiplication left to right, we look for addition or subtraction left to right. Okay, so that's what we're doing. There's nothing in parentheses to do. That's already done. There's no two-step procedures for any of the parentheses. They're just single numbers waiting for us to do something with them. As we look left to right, we see we have some multiplication to do. Okay, so we drop down and we do our next step, which is we reproduce what we're not going to be using. We have the 3 in parentheses plus, and then we have 3 times negative 2, which is what? Negative 6. Okay, and then we have the minus 2. Okay, so now we're going to add or subtract left to right. And if we say 3 plus the opposite of 6, what is 3 plus the opposite of 6? Negative 3, right? 3 plus the opposite of 6 is negative 6. 3 plus the opposite of 6 is negative 6. I need the 3 of you to see me after class. I don't have to say your name because you know who I'm talking to. Alright, so we have 3 plus a negative 6, or 3 plus the opposite of 6, which we know is negative 6. So we know if we're on the number line of 3, at 3, and we have to go negative 6, we know we're going to wind up at negative 3. So we have a negative 3. And then we have between that the minus a negative 2. Okay, now, the way we can say this is you can do one of two things here, ladies. You can write it this way. This is the first way you can write this down. You can say negative 3, and then a negative times a negative is a positive. And what do I have left? 2. You can do it that way. Or if you don't like that, you can say, I'm going to do it over here, you can say negative 3 plus the opposite of the opposite of 2. So what is the opposite of the opposite of 2? Right, the opposite of 2 is negative 2. The opposite of that is positive 2. So either way, what do I get? Negative 3 plus 2, negative 3 plus 2. However you like to do it. And if I have a negative 3 and I add 2 to that, what's my answer? Negative 1. Okay? Negative, could we add a 3 plus a negative 6? Or a 3 plus the opposite of 6? Okay, Christine? Yeah, the way I did it over here. The way I did it in the pink, where I said a negative times a negative is a positive. Pardon me? Because I have two negatives side by side. They change. It changes to positive. If you don't understand, we talked about this a few lessons ago. A negative, two equal signs, two signs that are alike are going to be positive. So here's two signs side by side that are alike. It's positive. Or you have to know that this is a multiplication thing going on here, because the answer is -1. I still have a -3 over here I have to finish. I have a -3 and I'm adding 2 to it. Look it. Here's my number line. There's 0. There's -1. There's -2. And there's -3. Okay, that's my -3 right there, right there. There's where I'm at. I'm adding to it a +2. Which direction am I going? So I'm going 2. There's 1, there's 2. What number am I at? There's my answer. All right? Does that make sense, Christine? Well, that doesn't sound very convincing. Do you understand that or not? You sure? All right. Where you at? For what letter? Yeah. Well, let's take a look. Let's do it. Yep. Do what? No, probably not. We have -m. Christine, make sure you follow along. Make sure you understand this. If you don't, let me know. -m plus n minus mn. Okay? Okay, and m equals, so m equals -2. N equals what? -5. First thing we do is we replace, oh, I see what you're saying as far as we have a -m. So you have to look at that as we're replacing, putting parentheses around the variable, not the signs. So it's going to be minus parentheses, plus parentheses, minus parentheses, parentheses. Okay, that's how we do that. Because when we have a plus sign here, we don't include the plus sign in the parentheses. This is going to be -2, and it's going to be -5, -2, and -5. Right. Mm-hmm. It'd be plus the opposite of the opposite. But to stick with our order of going left to right, multiplication, division, we're gonna rewrite this. It's a bit tedious, but we want to rewrite it. Plus, -5, and then minus, and then we have our multiplication right here. -2, right? But yeah, negative times negative, so it's +10. Absolutely right. We'll just put down 10. We don't have to put a plus there, right? We don't have to. 10 is positive unless we have a minus sign in front of it. Okay? We could put a plus sign. Listen, it doesn't really matter either way. All right. So now we're looking at what we have here, and what do you think we would want to do next? Right. So what we have here, guys, is we have the opposite of the opposite of 2. Okay? Polina, really? Why are you not paying attention to this? I hate to single somebody out because I'm not picking on you, but when you're right in front of me and you're looking at Catherine, and I don't know why you're looking at Catherine, but you should be looking at the board because you're struggling, and I want you to do well, and you're not going to learn by watching Catherine. I don't know what she's doing. Okay. All right. Not a good time probably to ask questions, especially to someone who needs to be paying attention. This is why, guys, nobody should be talking. If you're an A student and you're talking to somebody who's not, it's not fair to that person. I mean, everybody should be paying attention. And I know that for some of you, this is very. Listen, I get it. I know this is boring for some of you because you already understand it. I understand that. So, but you have to be patient and be thankful it's not you that's struggling. So if you get it, just kind of sit there and hold on because we'll get through it and just be, thank God that you're not struggling because there's going to come a time you're going to struggle. So just be patient and considerate of the people that aren't and don't distract them, please. All right. So we have the opposite. And I still think this is the best way to go about these problems. What is the opposite of the opposite of 2? It's positive 2. Or we know that when we see two negative signs by each other and there's no numbers in between them, we know it's going to be positive. So I can write this as a positive 2 plus a negative 5 minus a positive 10. All right, so let's look at this. We're at 2, and we're adding to that a negative 5. So what am I going to have there, somebody? You agree, Tanisha? If I have a positive 2 and I'm adding a negative 5, that I'll be at negative 3. Paulina, do you agree with that? Christine, you got it? All right. So I agree with that. So we're at a negative 3. So we got rid of all this. All this reduces down to negative 3 minus a positive 10. Or if we say a negative 3 plus, we put our own plus in here, the opposite of a positive 10. What is the opposite of positive 10? So we're going to change this. So now let me move this up here a little bit. So now what we're going to have is negative 3 plus the opposite of 10, which is plus a minus 10. You agree, right? So what's a minus 3 plus a minus 10? It's a minus 13. Okay? Does that make sense? I really think saying the opposite of the opposite, if you write it down, write it out, I think it's the best way to do these. And I am telling you, I understand if you're confused. I mean, it doesn't mean you're stupid or slow. It just means it's confusing. And this is confusing. It's confusing until you do it enough. The two options are you stay confused and you just say, okay, you know what, this really stinks. I'm not going to put a lot of time into it. Or you just say, I'm not going to let it beat me. I'm going to do enough of these things until I figure it out. And then once you figure it out, you look back and you think, man, that was easy. How did I ever not get that? And that's true about a lot of things we do in life, not just math, right? You do something and you guys that are cheerleaders, some cheerleading stunts you guys do are very, very difficult. If you gave up after the first time, you'd say, our team will never do this. And then a month and a half later, you're doing things remember how we couldn't do this? It's so easy now. Am I right? It's repetition. It's repetition. If you say no, then, maybe you're not an athlete. I don't know. I mean, but typically, if you do something over and over, you get better at it. And if you don't, maybe you shouldn't do it anymore. I've got kids on my baseball team in Little League, they're 12 years old and they're still playing like they're 8. Maybe they should try soccer. Maybe it's just not their deal, But unfortunately, math is a deal that you have to get whether you like it or not. And I think all of you, listen, I know all of you are capable of doing this. I know you are. So don't give up. Don't let it beat you. Hang in there. Tough it out. Fight through it, and I know you can do well. I really do. Christine. Yep. Yeah, I could try. I'm a big fan of the opposite of the opposite. Huh? Yeah. Yeah. Huh? Yeah. I mean, everybody has their own. Listen, this for me, this is the easiest way to do it. But and it doesn't matter if I get it, and you're the one doing the problem, so you have to get it too. So I mean, I totally get it. I get that. All right. So we have minus m plus n minus m n, and we know we have to have parentheses, plus parentheses, minus parentheses, parentheses. M is what, guys? M is negative 2, and n is negative 5, and negative 2, negative 5. All right, Christine, I'll try to explain this in a way that I normally don't talk to myself, so I got to think out loud here a little bit. I know that if I have a negative and a negative side by side, it becomes a positive. That I know, because we know that when we have like signs are always positive. So I can instantly change this into a plus 2. Okay, plus, I'm going to keep this the same, plus or minus 5. And then, now, here again, as I'm going left to right, I see that I have two signs that are together. Okay, so I'm going to change this to a positive 2 times a negative 5. Okay, and now I'm going across here looking for multiplication, and here I have a multiplication problem, so I'm going to go plus 2 plus a negative 5 plus a negative 5 times 2 is plus a negative 10. Okay, so far so good. Okay, and now over here I have let me scroll up a little bit. So now I have a plus 2, and I'm adding to that a negative 5. If I'm at the number line of positive 2 and I have to go negative 5, that means I'm going to the left, right? And if I'm going to the left, where am I going to stop? I'm going to stop at negative 3. So now I have a negative 3 plus a negative 10. Where am I going to be if I start at negative 3 and I add negative 10 more? Negative 13. Same answer. Right? Well, it does as long as you have a number line. But if the number is like 347 or 18 thirds, then it can really mess you up. But for now, if that's what you need, by all means, use whatever works for you. Because ultimately, I know you can do this. Okay? Have a great day.